Welcome. Good afternoon. It's about 1 minute before 2. We'll give it another minute to let people join today, but excited to have you all here. Super. Well, welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Muller, and I'm the Senior Director of Learning and Development here at IFDA. And we want to thank you all for joining us today for a really important conversation, the power of RFID, revolutionizing the food safety chain, brought to us by IFDA's elite member, PLM. We are thrilled to have PLM here, subject matter experts. They've been an elite partner of IFDA for the past 20 years, and we always appreciate and value their great insight and partnership. Before we start the presentation, just want to share a couple of housekeeping items. You'll notice that you're all on mute, but of course, that does not mean that you can't participate. Please enter any questions that you have during the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them if we can during the presentation. If not, we'll try to get to them at the end of our hour together. So one last item is we're recording the webinar. So if you found this useful and want to share with other folks within your organization, it will be posted on IFDA's site in a couple of days. So please feel free to share with us. Let me go ahead and introduce today a little bit of our panel. Our panel today will be hosted and moderated by David Coffield, who is the Director of Business Development here at IFDA. We also have Brian Wood. Brian has over 20 years of experience in the sales and business leadership development, utilizing technology-based solutions to solve customer pain points within their business. A delivery leader in leveraging enabled technology integrated platforms, enterprise-level hardware and software, RFID, contactless product technology, LOT and cloud-based solutions, and Brian was a key contributor in the creation of PLM TrustLink. Joining Brian is his colleague Levi Harris, who has nearly 20 years of experience in design, installation, and operations of auto ID solutions. He's responsible for the project management and implementation of all of PLM TrustLink auto ID initiatives. Levi assessed client operations to help develop and deliver solutions for PLM TrustLink and is responsible for the infrastructure and hardware solutions. A special note, while he was in college, Levi managed the cold chain research group at Arkansas's RFID Research Center, which was a predecessor of the renowned RFID lab at Auburn University. So with that, I'm going to put you in the great hands of Brian, who will lead us off today.
Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you everyone for joining us on this webinar. This webinar is going to be somewhat informal, just so all of you know. It's going to be more of, we hope, an educational discussion. We're going to have hopefully a little bit of interaction between perhaps David, Levi, and myself to sort of walk everybody through the thoughts and ideas and processes that really are evidence that's happening in a variety of industries today, leveraging technologies like RFID, but specifically starting to move into the food-related organizations and companies within the food industry and the food supply chain. So we're really excited to come here and talk to you a little bit more about what we've discovered, what we've seen, and hopefully you'll see and learn and get some value out of the discussions today. So moving forward, just a quick overview and agenda. We thank you, Carolyn. We went through the first part already with the welcome and introductions, so thank you for that. I'll start off here in a few moments with talking specifically about just technology overall, traceability, visibility of product within the supply chain, what that means in terms of value, how that can be leveraged in a variety of different areas and case studies, use cases perhaps. And then Levi will start talking about specifically RFID benefits, RFID technologies, and then we'll have more of a discussion afterwards in terms of just literally walking through some case studies and some examples of what we've seen in the industry over the past 7-8 years. So with that, we'll jump to this next slide. And David, any comments, thoughts before we get going? Because I know
Absolutely.
I want to make sure I include you in this conversation.
No, for sure, for sure. First, I obviously echo Carolyn's comments on PLM, and we couldn't do this without you guys, and we really appreciate PLM TrustLink on this webinar. I'm specifically excited for this conversation about RFID. I've been approaching my third year here at IFDA. I feel like this is a conversation that bubbles up every now and then. It's got a lot of technology out on the front end where people are having the ideas come up, having the conversations of, will it work? How does it work? Where can it work? So lots of good things in here. I'll just start. There's a couple questions. I think the agenda touched on some of those. But again, I've been here on my third year. I would say, you guys know this, food service may be a little slower to adopt this than previous industries. Levi probably knows this, and Brian, I'm sure you do too. Other organizations may be a little bit ahead of us on where we are at RFID. So I'm excited to learn about that here. And then it's specifically, what role does PLM TrustLink play in making it more accessible for our members? There's a lot of talk about there. I'm sure there's a lot of options out there also, but when the brass tacks comes down to it, what makes it accessible to your average, your typical food service distributor that may not be at the top level, or trying to have those conversations of where this may fit in their warehouse or in their supply chain for that matter. And again, we mentioned it kind of later here. We'll probably talk about a few of these, but I'm interested in some case studies. I know our members really value that real world experience of what works and even what hasn't worked. And those case studies sometimes may be more valuable on kind of some of the challenges they've already faced. And they've done some of the hard work for you. They've already figured out some of those challenges, how to overcome those. So lots to discuss in here. I would kick it back to you, Brian, to take the next two slides here, and then I'll pop in if I've got some questions, and looking forward to Q&A at the end.
Awesome. Well, thanks, David. Really appreciate that input. So let's get started. So just a real quick high level, or maybe not quick, but a high level overview of really where some existing technologies are today and what those technologies are specifically in providing value to food distribution organizations, food processing organizations, retail grocers, QSRs, and even restaurants. What we've seen over the last probably handful of years specifically is and we'll get into this in more of a technical discussion, but RFID specifically as it relates to technology for the benefit of operations, for the benefit of organizations, for the benefit of inventory management, it's really progressed significantly, just literally over in the last 5 years. That technology, specifically in retail and apparel, has really proven out a lot of benefits, a lot of value within those market segments, companies within those specific industries. And now the food organizations within the food industry are starting to take note, and they're starting to really look at perhaps maybe leveraging some of this technology that's out there in retail and apparel over into the food space. And that's really what we're starting to see more and more. In addition to that, there are obviously requirements that are starting to float into the food industry, specifically relative to food safety compliance, such as FSMA 204, some of the broader scale compliance regulations that are starting to be addressed and pushed into the industry. So really, when you look at the technology offerings for visibility, traceability, what that role plays in the food industry, there's really three main categories. There's this first category called what we call enhancing food safety. What do we mean by that? We literally mean looking at the opportunity to leverage technology such as RFID, such as software that TrustLink provides, for example, to offer up real-time tracking and tracing and monitoring of food product, literally to ensure product that can be identified, can be addressed, even before perhaps it gets into deeper into the supply chain for things like recalls and stuff like that. The other area is just making sure organizations are readily available for compliance and compliance needs. Maintaining accurate, up-to-date records, reporting on product, auditing, inspections, all of these are components that really fall into this, making sure that the compliance area within the organization is fulfilling that requirement and that need. And then the last piece, which is frankly the more interesting piece for me personally, because as we look at a business as a whole, we look at, and this is any business in any industry, you look at, okay, how can you leverage technology today to really enhance or increase operational efficiencies, operational effectiveness? So there's a lot of things in there that are a benefit specifically to the food organizations within the food industry that can leverage RFID technology specifically. And some of those benefits are things like automated processes, reducing manual errors, reducing labor costs, again, being able to provide real-time data, real-time access, literally to solve problems even before they perhaps start to develop. So all these technologies enable that efficiency and effectiveness because we're providing visibility to that product every step of the way, outside the organization, inside the organization, and then outside the organization once again. So some of the other benefits to that from an operational standpoint are things like verifying deliveries, alleviate inventory shrink. We see a lot of challenges with shipment shorts, shipment longs, frankly, and then inventory accuracy, and then just little activities that come into or turn into big costs, such as manual case counting on a daily basis. That can be alleviated too with some of the technologies that are out there today. So these are the areas that we see that are truly benefiting from the leveraging of RFID technology, the power of RFID technology, if you will, combined with software capabilities to add dashboards and ease of use for stakeholders within the organization to really understand where their product is at any given time. So,
Hey, Brian, just real
sure.
quick, I had a question that I thought of as you were talking there. You were, and maybe this is kind of the history of it, but you talked about how fast it's accelerated over the past 5 years, say from 2020. Where were we back then? And maybe we'll get to this in a little bit, but where do you think we're going to be in 2031 or 2035 years from now?
From a business standpoint, it truly is accelerating. It's accelerating because the value is starting to be seen because the cost of adoption of RFID is starting to decrease. So just in the last 5 years, we've seen a significant reduction in RFID initial costs to get organizations lit up, as we call it. So simple things like RFID tag costs, RFID hardware to read those tags, those costs have come down significantly. As far as technology development and where that's going and being able to provide industry some benefits to that over the next 5 or 6 years, Levi, from a technical standpoint, what do you see that could be of a benefit here in the next, I want to even say 3 years to 5 years, because things are being developed so fast, especially when you start looking at some higher end technologies like AI.
Yeah. So I think from a technical perspective, I think what we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years, at a high level, we're going to see more sensitive RFID tags. We're going to see better performance on harder to work with product, such as water and metal cans, things like that. And I believe we'll also start to see a broader adoption of the technology as it has standardized over the last 2 decades. And as we look into the future, we see more and more of those standards bodies actively working to improve what the standards are and to continue to work together with existing industry to continue to push the bounds on what is possible today.
Agreed completely. So when you look at companies that are looking to modernize operational systems, processes, how to manage product handling, or how to touch products on a more automated basis, what that enables you to do from a gain of not only efficiency but even a competitive advantage. How do you get introduced to that? How you get started in that? And what we've really seen is you can't come out of the chute and perfect this particular technology out from the get-go. There is a process. There's an iterative process to this. And there was a Wall Street Journal article, in fact, that was written a couple months ago, and it was very good in the sense that it was describing how industry is starting to adopt and adapt to RFID related technologies specifically. And what they've learned, what companies are learning is as long as you're working or developing progress towards that goal, there's benefits along the way. So, for example, things like leveraging investment in modernizing simple things like looking at processes that are typically manual today, and maybe you put in some automated processes to take out some of that labor cost. And really what it's getting down to, especially in the food industry, what we're seeing is a high labor, low tech approach that's going on today, and sort of reversing that. And organizations are looking at more high tech and then low labor. And that's simply because labor costs are getting so high, coupled with the cost of technology specifically coming down. There's a bit of an inflection point there where organizations are really starting to look at that more specifically. So when you look at the benefits to that, it's really moving from a high labor, low tech formula to a high tech, low labor formula. That makes sense. So how do we do that? What is the path? What is the path to digitalization? There's really three components to that. One is you need to look at your business roadmap. You need to look at what existing technologies and specifically digitalization of those technologies can help with perhaps business strategies and initiatives, really assessing and advancing those current technologies today to benefit the organization today. And again, just all in the scope of progress versus perfection. Maybe you start with a POC, for example, or a pilot, and then you verify that, okay, this is something that's really important to us. We're ready to move to that next stage, which is more of an implementation stage. For organizations that might have multiple facilities, maybe you start at a facility first, and then start looking at and assessing that technology capability for that one location, and then determine, oh, is this scalable to my other organizations? Things of that nature. And then that third piece, so you have business roadmap being one, you have assessing current technologies two, and then you really look at that third bucket that we've seen, which is really looking at that next gen technology and how can I leverage that, as we were just talking about, maybe 3 to 5 years from now, or maybe 5 to 7 years. What can we do today with technology that we can sort of bolt on that newer technology that's coming down the pathway? And as long as you're making that progress, as long as you're doing something and seeing the benefits along the way, it doesn't have to be huge macro steps. It can certainly be micro steps. But things that can add value along the way, that is truly leveraging the benefit of technology today, and then opening up the door for that next gen technology tomorrow. So just think about, progress before perfection. I love that statement. That statement was used in that Wall Street Journal article, and that's what we're seeing today. Organizations that are advancing are literally looking at, okay, what can we do today to see some value today? It might not be perfect, but it's giving us the path to getting better. So fundamentally, what we're really talking about here, you can't really do anything or make any decisions on anything with your business without verifying, does that make sense? Everything that we do in our organizations today, and I'm sure everybody that's listening today, you don't do anything within your organization without looking at, okay, what's the benefit? I have a limited amount of resources. How can I maximize that output with those limited amount of resources? So, an old cliche, but it's still extremely, extremely relevant today. You can't manage what you can't measure. So, what are you putting in as far as measurement tools to be able to help manage your business, manage your workflow, manage your product, manage your inventory? How are you doing that today? What can you do better for tomorrow? Is there technology today that can help you get there tomorrow? And obviously, what we see today is just a huge movement within the food industry specifically. Again, moving from that high labor, low tech touch to that high tech, low labor touch. And I hope I'm getting that right because sometimes I mess that up when I talk. Uh, so, when we move into some certain KPIs, I mean, obviously everybody has key performance indicators or metrics that you want to have within your organization. What we see is there's really two buckets. There's a quality KPI and then there's, quantity KPI. What do we mean by that? Well, obviously quality are things like, are you in compliance? What is that costing us in order to be in compliance? Just for example, quantity are things like do we have inventory shrink? What's that metric? How can we reduce that number of shrink in our P&L so we can bring more money back to the organization? So KPIs are obviously critical in these decision-making processes when you start looking at uh, at technology. So, what types of quality KPIs specifically that we talk about and what we see today in the industry, things like recall rates, incident reports, what's needed by that, how are those measured today? Is it manual? Is it pencil, clipboards, check boxes? Or can you institute some sort of digitalization for that opportunity to lower your costs? And still get those quality results that you're looking for. Regulatory compliance, that's a big thing in the food industry. Obviously, it's going to continue to be a big thing. Yes, FSMA 204 was supposed to be launched, but now it's been delayed or pushed back for 30 months. But we see a lot of organizations that had already committed to putting in technology opportunities for this particular KPI, if you will, for compliance reporting. They're not stalling just because the FSMA 204 rule was delayed 30 months. They're looking at leveraging it not only for this quality KPI, but looking at quantity KPIs as well, because you're not going to institute something that's of a cost to your organization without seeing some sort of actual benefit, a tangible benefit. And that's what some of this technology opportunity is here, especially leveraging RFID along with uh, robust software to capture that information and provide that information for organizations.
And Brian, that's seen down the line, right? I mean, the operator, right, the distributor helps the distributor, helps their customer too, right? I mean, they're getting better product on the back end.
Sure. I mean, I mean, quality is quality, right? I mean, however you measure it today, the real question is, okay, we have to measure this today. How can we bring existing technology today, such as RFID, to help with that process? Everything has to do with, or should have to do with lowering cost in your organization, making things more effective, making things more efficient. And what's interesting about the food industry is it seems like in many cases organizations within the food space are significantly behind from just standard technology adoption. We see organizations today, in some cases, that are truly still using pencils, pens, clipboards, check boxes, and really you have to look at that process in and of itself and say, okay, are we really maximizing the inputs? Are we maximizing the resources that we have today in order to, or optimizing what I like to call resources today to get that best output for tomorrow? And that's where technology, that's where digitalization really can come into play. Some operational KPIs. So we move from sort of the quality KPIs, such as getting information for compliance, for food safety, and then moving into operational KPIs. Okay, things like, okay, how are we going to increase our efficiency? And then what's going to allow us to reduce our labor, reduce our waste. So we see some very significant gains in areas such as you can have RFID technology to be able to scan product faster, get faster processing times. What that means is, again, you're being more efficient with your time. You're being more robust and opportunistic with your time when you have certain technology capabilities at your hand that you can use. Inventory resiliency in the event of recall. Instead of recalling the whole lot, maybe you just recall a batch. That helps in the reduction of waste, for example. I mean, we've seen countless times where if there was a recall that was happening, the entire lot, multiple lots that were even associated with that particular product was pulled out of the supply chain. That's a good thing from a safety only perspective. It's not necessarily a good thing when you look at the cost that's absorbed along the way with that particular recall. Another big thing I want to sit on here for a second is inventory accuracy. This is a huge one. Understanding and getting right product, right delivery. It's very public. For example, that Walmart has stated, because they've been leveraging RFID substantially for the last 4 or 5 years, they have stated that every 5% of inventory accuracy that they are able to achieve, that equates to 1% gross revenue gain in their business. So if you can think about the magnitude of Walmart, and they're looking at inventory accuracy at 5%, equaling 1% gross revenue, that's a significant game changer for organizations the size of Walmart. So if you even bring that down to a smaller organization and you look at, whoa, if I can increase my inventory accuracy by 5%, 6%, what does that equate for me in terms of gain in revenue? So those are some KPIs or metrics that you can use from an operational standpoint. Leveraging data analytics, obviously, if you have the right software, if you have the robust software that's needed, you can gain significant opportunities looking at the data, analyzing that data in near real time, and then making faster decisions or better decisions with your decision-making process as it relates to your product, as it relates to how you're managing inventory, for example. And then the other side to this is the reduction of labor and again, the reduction of waste, as I was talking about a moment ago here with recalls. So, real-time tracking and communication, big deal. That obviously saves a significant amount of time on labor. Manual entries, we talked about that a moment ago. Think about all the manual entry efforts that people are utilizing today in their warehouses, perhaps, or even just doing case counts. When you're doing that stuff manually, you're bound to have some sort of an error. That's a cost to the organization. So again, an operational KPI that could be placed into the reduction of those entries. Labor costs, obviously, if you have tools and capabilities at that level, you can achieve some substantial savings in terms of time, which equals labor costs.
Hey,
And then,
Brian, just real quick on the accuracy part of this. I've been in a few warehouses in my time here. I feel like a common issue I see is, hey, the warehouse management system says I've got 10 cases. You walk to the floor, I've got 2 cases, or 2 went out the door, and it wasn't in the system yet. I mean, I know most people on this call understand that challenge. Maybe is that we're hitting the nail on the head right there. Of kind of
that is a perfect example of likely the process being a mixture of some lower tech solutions that are being in play with high labor.
Yeah.
So when we talk about high labor, we talk about a lot of touches for things. When you do a lot of touches for things, that's when you start doing and looking at manual errors. I mean, nobody's perfect. No human is perfect. You're going to get tired at the middle of the day, the end of the day. You might miss a case count here. You might miss, frankly, even a pallet that was moved over there and now it's not there. Somebody else moved it. I mean, Levi, you've seen this firsthand. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, the inventory accuracy, there's so much importance on that beyond just that 1% gross revenue change. The op just the sorry, let me think of a way to say this well. The the opportunity cost of the time that people spend looking for items in a warehouse is significant. The cost is beyond just the labor rate, but you also have a significant morale hit as well. When someone's looking around trying to find product, they start to get frustrated, and that can spread through. So you're increasing your inventory accuracy through higher technology, lower touch is going to improve your overall business beyond just revenue. It also helps with employee morale, as well as eliminating increased labor costs for time spent looking for product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super helpful. Yep.
So just some examples of some operational KPIs that we see in organizations that could be leveraged and utilized with some newer digital technologies. And so speaking of newer digital technologies or even old school digital technologies, I'll turn this over to Levi and he can talk specifically about some of the technologies that are out there in the market today.
Thanks, Brian. So really, at the end of the day, all of these technologies, really what they are is they are data carriers. Because what's important at the end of the day is the data that gets back into the system to be able to act upon and to be able to make decisions from. So in today's world, we have a handful of common marker technologies. There's obviously pen and paper. There is barcode, which is a line of sight technology. It's a single read at a time. It's your lowest cost. It is what most people are familiar with today, and a lot of people may use already. However, you are limited to, again, line of sight, single read per scan, and it's essentially a physical touch by a human if utilizing handheld scanners. Then we can move on to RFID, which is a technology we recommend for capturing this data within the food space. And we'll go into why here in a little bit. But RFID in and of itself is a non-line of sight technology. You do not have to be able to physically see the product to be able to read it. You can read many at a time, thousands, and you can enable greater automation through these processes. And then finally, we move on to sensors. Now, sensors come with a significant cost increase, but you can also start to get temperature, humidity, light, vibration, shock, all different types of conditions that may be important to monitor depending on the product type. Sensors don't really have there isn't really a standards body that's governing how sensor data is transmitted. So it's kind of the Wild West at that point. So interoperability is not the best in the sensor world today. So back on the RFID side, which is the topic of today's discussion. So we recommend RFID for several really good reasons. One, the ones I've mentioned previously, but also as the cost has come down significantly, the value that is achieved with RFID is just continuing to increase. So with RFID and this non-line of sight read many, when it comes to an entire pallet of product, we can validate that entire pallet in seconds without having to break it down just by scanning it with RFID. If you try to do that with barcode, you would have to break down the entire pallet and scan each individual package and then rebuild the pallet if it still needed to be shipped. With RFID, we can do it in a matter of seconds without having to break down the pallet. So now we've increased throughput in a warehouse as well through utilizing these technologies. So, next slide. There you go. All right. So barcode. I'll talk a little bit more on this. So barcodes, there is a difference between 1D and two-dimensional barcodes. So a higher tech is the 2D barcode, the lower tech is the 1D. 1D is the standard that everybody is used to seeing on products. It's your standard UPC, just like in the bottom of your screen. you're limited on how much data you can put in, and that is a function of the width that you can print. Now, with two-dimensional barcodes, you can put a significant amount more data in, and people are becoming much more familiar with two-dimensional barcodes, especially since COVID, with the QR code becoming very prevalent for accessing menus at restaurants. The QR code is a great example of a two-dimensional barcode. So with the two-dimensional barcodes, you can have additional data and you can have additional data within them. They also have additional data resiliency. So when you look at a 2D barcode versus a 1D barcode, a 1D barcode's data resiliency is only in the vertical dimension. So as long as you can get basically a line directly across it, you can read it. But the second you lose one of those bars, it's unreadable. But if you look at a data matrix or a QR code or other 2D technologies, built into the standards for those is error correction and redundancy. So in a QR code, you may have the exact same data in that code 3 or 4 times. That way, if there is damage to that code, you can still read and collect that data. But 2D barcodes, just like 1D barcodes, are still limited by the same problem. It's a line of sight technology. You're really reading one at a time. And 2D barcodes require an imager or a camera to actually read. So the cost for the hardware to read them is higher than it is for a 1D barcode. All right. So back onto the RFID. As we mentioned before, read many at once, rapidly. We're higher tech, lower labor. So as we talked about data resiliency on the barcode, RFID also has a decent amount of data resiliency as well, because of the fact that this is not anything that's written or printed. It's a physical piece of silicon with an antenna. That data is in non-volatile memory. So unless you completely destroy the tag itself, that data will stay on the tag with high fidelity. RFID actually really likes motion too. So as things are moving around, it actually helps us with reads, especially on difficult to read items. Now, this is beneficial in food distribution because we have a lot of movement as things happen. So we don't have to stop and pause and stop everything we're doing to try to read these. We can actually read as product is in motion as well. And this also allows a reduction in labor. And how it allows a reduction in labor is because you're able to scan product faster. You're able to perform inventories and cycle counting in much shorter amounts of time. You can automate your loading validations. You can automate delivery validation as well. And create enhanced digital delivery receipts by utilizing this technology. All right. And so now, as Brian talked about before, we talked about the KPIs. And one of the things that happens here is operational cost saving time and money. Faster scanning is faster processing times. You have inventory resiliency in the event of a recall. You can find your product faster. You can get the affected product off the shelf faster. Inventory accuracy, which we've been talking about, right product, right delivery, is critical. And utilizing RFID will help ensure that the right product is being delivered. You're also able to leverage additional data analytics to make better decisions faster, because you are collecting more data. Inherently, with the technology like RFID, you will collect more data than you have in the past. And so this all goes back to reducing labor and reducing waste.
Levi, before you go on, there's a couple of quick questions here in the chat. I don't know if you'd like to answer them
Sure
while
thing.
we're here. One is per item tagging necessary, or is it a per basket, pallet, box recommended?
So that really depends on what you're trying to achieve. Typically, we see at a case level, tagging being done at a case level. And the reason for that is simple. Today, there's a lot of errors when during selection when pallets are built, and if you're using barcode to scan, there's a lot of errors that occur in that process. Somebody may grab the wrong product. If you're just tagging at a pallet level, you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't have insight into the fact that there's a wrong product on the pallet. So tagging down at a case level, or which typically is your selling unit level, is where we find the best success.
Great.
Brian, anything else?
Now, well, getting back to the just the thought of progress before perfection, what we have seen in some cases is organizations looking at tracking pallets first. It is a lot more advantageous to go to the case level, like Levi was suggesting, but in order to gain some effectiveness within your organization, sometimes you can just start tracking at the pallet level, depending on if you're misplacing or losing pallets, which frankly some organizations do, depending on their volume, depending on who their customers are and where they're shipping that product to. But you can it doesn't matter where you start. The fact of the matter is, if you start, or when you start, I should say, you can start gaining some of those efficiencies and effectiveness, pretty substantially. So it really depends. We like to see case level, just because the ROI on case level tracking seems to just really deliver. Because you start looking at when organizations do case counts, for example, there's organizations that are doing multiple case counts a day. If that case has already been tagged with an RFID label, for example, or a smart label, generally speaking, and you can actually capture that information through a handheld reader or even a fixed reader, you don't have to do those case counts multiple times a day, every day. You know exactly what your inventory is at that given time. So we recommend case level at PLM TrustLink, but that doesn't mean you can't start at even the pallet level, just to get gain of function, if you will, for technology.
And it looks like we have some questions, and I think you're going to go in there a good leeway around providing some use case for food distribution or food specific examples. Would that be correct?
Yeah. So the next couple of slides, for example, we have several examples within food distribution specifically. Food distribution is near and dear to our hearts because PLM Fleet obviously provides refrigerated trailers to the food distribution industry. PLM Fleet is North America's largest refrigerated trailer leasing and rent company, and most of our customers on our refrigerated trailer side are in food distribution. Our group, PLM TrustLink, has visibility to that. So that's why food distribution organizations are near and dear to our heart. So when we have access to those organizations, we can provide POCs and pilot programs for these organizations to really prove out if the ROI makes sense. So, for example, we've done several pilots with food distribution organizations over the last couple of years, mainly for things like inventory tracking, inventory accuracy, inventory management, and then all the way out to verifying delivery and getting real-time delivery receipt on product that's been dropped at the customer site, which helps substantially on credits and claims, for example, that a customer might have for short ships. I ordered 30 cases of product. You delivered 25 cases. You need to give us a credit for 5. We've done some pilots specifically for that use case in a couple different scenarios, large scale, in fact, and we've realized through that process, leveraging RFID on the front end, PLM TrustLink software on the back end, we've seen up to a 60-70% reduction in that short claim number which literally equates to less than a 1 year return on that ROI. So it is substantial when you start looking at what is available out there today in the terms of technology capabilities and really clawing back some of that loss that we see specifically in food distribution. Getting to that inventory management component. If you know where your product is at any given time inside what we call your four walls, uh, you see a tremendous amount of opportunity to cut that inventory shrink, uh, i.e., having write-offs at the end of the year because you're not really familiar with where that inventory has gone, or you can't account for that. We've seen some significant gains just in leveraging RFID technology for that purpose. So what we like to do is look at pain points initially with inside the organization, and then apply our solution to those pain points at a small scale level, maybe a POC, maybe a pilot, to justify and look at what that return might look like when you start to scale that. In some cases, may not make sense. You might want to leverage some other technologies that are out there today, and maybe it's not RFID. Maybe it is some sort of a sensor-related technology like Levi was describing earlier, but on a smaller scale, and maybe that helps your organization. This discussion today is really to bring more an awareness to food distribution organizations with a lot of proof technology that's out there today and use cases that can be examined to really translate that into your organization for operational effectiveness. I mean, that's literally what we're trying to provide here, is just some insight for that. But we do have cases. I think I just described on this one here. This was a case, food distribution organization, mid-size. They had a significant problem with claims at customer sites. We put in our program for them. They realized actually quite a bit north of 60% reduction in claims, which equated to less than a 1 year ROI on that particular implementation. We've seen better ROIs even just on providing the customer, the food distribution customer, insight to that delivery in near real time. So our software has the capability of you being the food distributor giving access to your customer for that delivery. So instead of taking a picture like Amazon does and then sending it to you in an email, when you purchase your product and it's sitting on your doorstep, PLM TrustLink actually goes one step further, and we're giving that customer actual access so they can just simply log in and say, oh, okay, here's all the shipments, and this is when they were delivered. These are the cases on the pallets that were delivered. I'm good. We can move forward. So that cuts out a lot of that audit trail, if you will, to go back and recapture those claims and shorts that are evident in the organizations today. So implementation stages. So it is an iterative process. It's not a turnkey and you go. There are certain stages that you would want to look at to gravitate towards a technology solution for your organization. We like to start out with things like reviewing gap analysis, or providing a gap analysis in current business practices. What does that look like? What does that mean? How can you translate that information that is found in that gap analysis to some leveraging of digitalization, leveraging of some technology? What does that look like? And then if it's decided that this is something that we want to pursue, then we look at putting in, literally a best practice for change management. So things like bringing awareness to the organization. What is the desired result for this particular engagement? Providing knowledge, sharing knowledge back and forth to put that change management process into place. What is the ability to act, and then how to report it and reinforce that activity along the way. So there's some training, There's some educating involved in that process. And then finally, which is really a benefit to the organization's ecosystem, is once you have this in place, you can go back to your suppliers and other trading partners and say, hey, this is what we're doing today. You guys can benefit from it if you just decide to do this. For example, maybe tagging your product at their source with an RFID label or a smart label or even a 2D barcode, as Levi was describing, something to move along that particular process for your benefit, for the supplier's benefit, and ultimately the benefit of the customer. Again, it gets back to that. Are we making progress? It's not going to be perfect, but let's continue to make this process or look at this process in an iterative with an iterative opportunity for all involved in the supply chain. So, hate to be redundant here, but I'm going to be redundant. It is all about resiliency in the supply chain. What do we mean by that? Again, making sure your inventory is accurate, making sure you're tracking product in real time, both inbound, outbound, and even inside your warehouse. Understanding where that product came from. That gets with the whole food traceability and compliance, specifically for FSMA 204. There's certain food items, as I think all of us on this call understand now, that it's under that food traceability list for FSMA 204. Some of that reporting requirement is going to be, okay, where did that product come from? What's the history of that product? Where was that food product generated? Was it in Salinas at a leafy green farm, or was it in Yuma at another leafy green farm? I mean, these are specifics that are going to need to be tracked for compliance. And then, having that analytic, that's the real benefit of having this data, capturing this data, leveraging technology, and acquiring data. What can you do with that data? What kind of analytics you can put into place to make sure that you're managing your inventory appropriately and managing your suppliers and customers effectively? One of the other benefits that we see that we didn't touch on, but I'm glad we have it here. So we talked about quality KPIs. We talked about some quantity APIs. This last piece here is more of specific KPIs relative to customers specifically. I mean, we're all in business to have and retain and optimize our customers' experience. Some of the components that technologies today, specifically RFID and RFID software, allows you to do is track better sales growth rates. With this technology, are we seeing that uptick in revenue? Again, going back to that simple calculation of 5% inventory accuracy improvement equals 1% gross revenue. Is that true? That could be a KPI in that sales growth rate metric. Customer lifetime value. What is that value for us with that customer long term? Attrition rate with customers is a huge metric within organizations today. There's an old school adage that it costs you 10 times the amount of time, energy, effort, and money to achieve one new customer versus just to retain the existing customer that you already have. What are you doing for that benefit of that existing customer? Leveraging technology could be an opportunity for you to do that. Net Promoter Score, big new type of KPI with customers that equates to potential, revenue. Net Promoter Scores, do customers like you? Are they able to or want to buy from you again? Do they dislike you? Do they say never again on the face of the earth am I going to buy product from that food distributor again? Those metrics, relate to this Net Promoter Score that some organizations are really looking at very seriously, especially with the added value of social media to be able to provide that Net Promoter Score for the organization. And then the last but not least thing is the online reviews, the ratings, the Yelps, all the other social media tools that are being used out there for company reviews. Those are substantial. So these are some really some cool KPIs that you can leverage into your organization with RFID and RFID software technologies that are out there today. So with that, we're sort of wrapping up. We have some time for some Q&A if possible. If not, I want to make sure that we're respectful of everybody's time. I hope this has been helpful to all of you that are attending and listening. And Carolyn, if I'm not mistaken, we are recording this,
That is
so
correct. Yes.
we can send this to IFDA members upon request.
Yep.
So with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so thanks again, Brian. It was really great. We do have a question. Do you have RFID readers and antennas in your refrigerated trucks?
No,
Okay.
we do not today. That is an interesting technical challenge. It's really about keeping them from being damaged in the back of a trailer. That's where the biggest challenge with that is. We do not do that, and it's not an offering we have today. There hasn't been as much of a market to really drive down that we've seen so far, but it is something that we can investigate in the future.
Yeah, great.
What we do though, I will add to that, and Levi could probably jump in here also because it's somewhat technical in nature to a certain degree, but we do have telematics capabilities on our trailers.
Yep.
And we can leverage that telematic data into our PLM TrustLink software to be able to provide you that visibility of that data. So as you combine that telematic data into our software with the unique product identifiable information that we can capture using RFID, then you have a perfect visibility solution from literally origin to destination for your product.
Absolutely. Yeah, that the tie-in with telematics is a piece I particularly like, simply because it's one that's actually been missing from a lot of solutions over the years. And having the ability to marry the data of what is on a trailer along with its condition throughout the entire time of its transit is very, very powerful.
I have one quick question, kind of goes to the same point. Can you just explain a little bit, what does this look like in a warehouse? Now, I've seen on our show floor options that are out there. It's kind of like a magical wizard, right? Like the pallet runs through the
Yeah.
where the sensors are and it's been read. Just give our maybe our viewers know this, but just give us a little look what that looks like in the warehouse versus what they have now.
Sure thing. So from a standpoint of RFID infrastructure, so what we would typically do around a dock door looks similar to the exit gates when you're going out of a retail store with the the checkpoint sensormatic type whoever makes that.
Yep.
Yeah, the EAS.
Low-mag.
Yep.
Yeah.
They look very similar to that, a little bit bigger, but not much, and by far more industrial. Can hopefully take a hit from a forklift. But you also have handheld devices which look almost identical to the ones that staff are using today. So there's not much of a change in a physical look from that perspective, and the labels will look the same as your labels do today. The actual RFID tag is embedded in it. You don't see it from the front of the label as a general rule. It's just kind of hidden and happy in there on its own. So there's not a lot that you physically see that's different outside of potentially the dock doors or anything that we may set up around a pallet wrapping station, which would look similar to what we do at a dock door. But really what you see in a difference is in the processes. So like you mentioned, pallet can just drive through those little, kind of drive through the portal. We can read everything. Or we read, in some cases, we may not be trying to read everything on the pallet at that point. We may have validated that a step earlier, and now we're looking at a license plate. So we look at different things based off speed, motion, and where they are in the process. But really, it's the processes you see change more than anything.
Super helpful. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you all for your time today. It was great to, be here on this really important topic. As Brian and we indicated at the beginning, this is being recorded. So if there's anything, you would like to share out within your own organization or even, beyond, please feel free to do so. Hopefully, um, possibly with the long weekend, I'm going to say by Tuesday up on the site, but you can definitely share that out. Again, PLM is, a fantastic elite sponsor for over 20 years, supporting IFDA and the work that all of our food service distributors do. So we greatly, greatly appreciate all of their expertise and their commitment to our industry. I'll make a note that here at IFDA, we're 4 weeks away from Solution. So PLM will be there, joining us there, not only on the expo floor to talk about this and all the other things that they do, but as well as all the other content we have. So looking forward to seeing you all there and hopefully continuing these great conversations. So once again, Brian, Levi, David, thanks so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome. You all have a great one.
See you in Columbus.